حي على الفلاح.
Safaha and safiha, right? The fool. And the one who just wants to get his lusts out, he's hormonal, he wants to get, brother, I gotta get married. Why do you gotta get married? I can't explain it, I gotta get married. Because I'm a man and I'm in college and it's summer, I have to get married. No, it's not, doesn't work like that. You have to have the intention of starting a household. Hormones themselves are not enough. They're not enough of a sign of adulthood. Now, the ayat before was, حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغُوا النِّكَاحِ. If you read part of the ayah, test the orphans until they reach marriage age. Great. What was the next part immediately? فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا. If you find maturity in them, they're on the right track, they're finding work, they're fending for themselves, and this is not the situation. What I'm going to share over here, inshallah, people from different parts of the world might be watching, but particularly I want to talk about the American context, especially the American Muslim community that's from suburbia. Our children mature very late, if ever. Their college tuitions are paid for, their rooms are cleaned up by their moms, they don't so much as do their own laundry, they, their car, their driving, their insurance, everything is taken care of, right? And they just live a life of a silver spoon. And, their dinner is brought upstairs to them while they're playing Xbox or PS3, because they don't have time to go downstairs. Right? They're just this spoon-fed life. And then they get married, or they think they're ready to get married. They complain, my parents aren't letting me get married. Or and they don't have the maturity to fend for themselves for one day. And you could tell who they are, because when they live on their own for a little bit, like for example in a 10-month program, what their apartment looks like. You can tell where they stand, how ready they are to get married. You can tell. If you haven't done dishes for like 2 weeks, then there's a pretty good indication you're not ready to get married. There's no maturity there yet. But brother, I could grow a beard, that means I'm a man, therefore the hukm shar'i applies on me and I have to it doesn't work that way, buddy. Muhsineen, you have to be ready to take care of a household. You can't even take care of a room. How are you going to take care of a household? Just because you have urges doesn't mean you're ready. And this is a very important conversation. Because a lot of times our youth are getting married without fully realizing. And that's not to say young people can be mature sometimes, hopefully. Some people, sometimes young people will be mature enough to get married, and that's fine. But it's a case-by-case thing. We can't we can't say sweepingly, let your kids get married early. Let your kids get married at 19 or 20 or 18 or something. Or there's no other rule either, we have in some parts of the Muslim, you're not getting married until you're a doctor, and you're head of, pediatrics or surgery at the hospital, and your hair is turning gray and you're balding, and, Listen, let's be real, because our youth are going to college, right? And in a college, there's a lot of fitna. There's a lot, and 8 years of that, 4 years of that, and you're thinking no impure thoughts have crossed this boy's mind, and he's never been inclined to do anything wrong. I don't know. That's a little unfair. And if he brings up marriage, the mother says, you should be ashamed of yourself talking about marriage. You're only 25. You're just a baby right now. I'm not a baby, mother. I've I've had problems since I was like 13. So, 12 years running, So we have to have real conversations, especially parents that ever listen to this, and those of you that us included, we have to be cognizant of the fact that temptation is more accessible now than ever before. Right? So we have to be able to deal with that and help our children face it and stand up, resist it, and also, make sure they're mature enough to get married. It's not, the solution isn't marriage. It's not. Because just because you get married doesn't mean fahsha is no longer a problem for you. It's not. Because it's a bigger problem than that. So this is muhsinina ghayra musafihin, not just someone who wants to fulfill their lusts. فَمَسْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ. I should say one more tangent thing, it's important though, because it's really important. And that is, we're living in an impulsive society. You get a craving, you go downstairs and you get yourself some candy, you get yourself soda, ice cream. Just like that, when people get hormonal cravings, they just put something on their mobile device. Right? And it's basically, how conditioning, classical conditioning, you get an urge, you get it fulfilled immediately, right? And you get used to that. You get in the mode of that. Well, when you become married, then you're married to a human being. You're not married to a device. You're married to a human being. And just because you have a certain feeling doesn't mean your spouse does. Right? And so what happens, a lot of families go into chaos because the man is addicted to getting his desires fulfilled immediately. And that's the impulsive psychology. For men and for women, by the way. for men and for women. And that's a dangerous psychology. It's a disturbing mindset to have, destructive for families. We're supposed to be people of sabr. That's what qualifies a believer. One of the salient qualities in the life of a believer is holding themselves back, having restraint. And that's the exact thing that's being stripped away from us by immediate access to everything. So we have to control ourselves and hold ourselves back from immediate access to things. You know? Because otherwise you'll just have a messed up family life. You'll just discover the consequences of that later. And like the common example I like to give, because I think it's a big problem, and I think it sets marriages on the wrong foot, is extravagant weddings. Right? Extravagant weddings we just violate all kinds of rules of Islam in doing them. So if there was any angels would never, not even be found in the same, area because of the kinds of weddings we do. So forget barakah, forget du'as at that wedding, We completely violate those rules. And then on top of that, they're so overpriced and extravagant and over the top just because your cousin had a baller wedding. So you have to go and outdo them, right? And then the next person comes around and they have to outdo the next and the next and the next. And so it becomes a culture of competition where one after the other, you have to compete with those who came before you. Creates a culture of oppression. People feel like they're not decent people unless they overspend. These are the chains that are placed on top of people. You know how many people put themselves in financial, emotional difficulty, all wondering, what are people going to say? Just because of that one phrase, what are people going to say? What's your aunt going to say? What's your cousin going to say? What are those guys going to say? Well, just because of reputation, that's all. The deen came to remove us from all that stuff. All you have to worry about is what's Allah going to say. That's all you have to worry about. Everything else is fine. You'll be okay. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ. And of course this is also the law, and this is something we're going to learn in Surah Al-Ma'idah in detail, or it will come up towards the end of Surah Al-Ma'idah in detail, but here it's important to mention also, laws are a means of purification. Us obeying Allah's law, we learn this in many sayings of the Prophet ﷺ. We do a good deed and some, إِنَّ الْحَسَنَاتِ يُذْهِبْنَ السَّيِّئَاتِ, like Quran says, good deeds alleviate or remove bad deeds. Following Allah's law is an expiation for smaller sins. It gets those things out of the way, it purifies us. And so we have less burden to carry on Judgment Day. Literally, there's a heavier load for us to carry. So Allah says Allah wants to lighten your burden. Not just in dunya, but in akhirah also, you'll have less to carry. You'll have lighter baggage that came with you, as far as sins are concerned. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. And the human being was created weak. It's beautiful that Allah mentions lightening a burden and then weakness, because a weak person can't hold a lot, can't carry a lot, right? So this parallel is made between those two things. You're weak, you can't hold that much, so I made sure I gave you something you can handle, it's easy for you. This is a continuation of what Allah said to us at the end of Al-Baqarah. لَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. No person will be Allah does not burden upon any person more than what they can hold, what they can bear, their wus'a, their capacity, right? This is all of the ahkam are within our wus'a, within our capacity. And the purpose of them is to make life easier for us. If only we saw it that way. We think of Islam, or especially someone who tries to abide by the rules of Islam, as someone who's very strict. Muslim. They're a little too Muslim. Or they'll say, that's a strict Muslim. You heard those terms? That's a strict Muslim. That's just that idea is the exact opposite of what Allah wants us to think. That guy is making his life easy. He knows what it means to live a simple life, an easy life. This is يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ أَن يُخَفِّفَ عَنْكُمْ وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَحْنُ ضَعِيفُونَ ضُعَفَاء فِي الْفَهَمِ أَيْضًا. Where we're also weak in understanding. We're weak in understanding that this makes life easier, not harder.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If you enjoyed this video, please do share it with friends and family. If you want to see more videos from this series, click on the box at the top. If you want to see other videos, click on the box at the bottom. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks.